Welcome to the BriteVibe podcast. At BriteVibe, we believe everyone deserves to be happy. But in today's world, everywhere you turn, there is division and negativity. At BriteVibe, we have created a global movement to bring 8 million people together who are inspired to live bright, live bold, and share bright vibes. Alone, it can be hard to change, but together we can change the world. Welcome to the BriteVibe podcast. Our special guest is Viki Zarkin. Viki, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so happy to have you on. This is going to be one of my favorite introductions because, they say, you've heard the old phrase, 1 in a million. You're actually 1 in 7 billion. We can, almost 8 billion, right? So instead of 1 in a million, we can say 1 in 7 or 8 billion. And everybody wants to be unique. Everybody wants to be special. But you actually have a badge of honor that you are unique and special. That's part of why we had you on the show today, that you are the only person alive that we know of, right, in the world.
Yeah.
Who has survived stage 4 metastatic cancer for over 10 years. And for those of us who have just stumbled on that word with me, what exactly did that mean? Stage 4 metastatic cancer. What is metastatic? Define that for us.
Metastatic basically means that it's spread outside of its original site. So
outside of, okay.
I started as a breast cancer and it spread into my whole mediastinum, which was comprised of the left ventricle of my heart, my left lung, my whole chest cavity, my mammary glands, about 30 or more lymph nodes. It was in my neck. It was in my esophagus. I mean, I was, riddled. It didn't just travel. It took like a year-long vacation and had a passport that got punched at a lot of different stops. So this was so you're much more than just that, right? You're an author now. You've written a book. You have your latest book, I Am the One, is out. You have a course that's out. You're definitely a advocate for women going through cancer, but also probably healthcare in general, right? And that's what we're going to. So that's what we're going to talk a lot about on the show today. Is just kind of being your own advocate. What that means, what you went through. And so we'll get into that. But this is very personal to me because my mother is just on the backside of cancer, recovering from cancer. And so, 15 years ago, she had breast cancer on one side, and then it came back 15 years later on the other side. And then it did as yours did, but it didn't go around the world. It just traveled to her liver. And so she is, all the numbers are good. Everything's going the right way. She's just really in the kind of the maintenance therapy part of the process, I guess is what you call it. But she's had some really good results and some good news as part of the medical establishment. But then also she was doing some stuff working on herself and her own personal, her baggage. I think she worked with a lady to help set some of those bags down so they weren't so heavy to lift, which I think also helped with the healing process, right? We carry along a lot of it. Amazing.
Yeah, and she is amazing. She's 73. I think it's okay for me to say that because nobody on the show probably knows my mom, so I think it's okay to say her age. She wouldn't be mad at me. She wouldn't be mad anyway. But yeah, no, she's been through a lot. She's a very strong woman, but obviously you went through some remarkable recovery because you were, as you said, riddled with this. This was about 10 years ago, right? 2011, almost 11 years ago now. And so I'm just curious, what were you actually doing vocationally? What was your life like then? What were you, what was your profession or what were you doing?
Well, by trade, I'm a broadcast journalist, but
is that right? Okay. You should be interviewing me then. You should be doing this. You're the professional. You have a degree in this stuff. I'm just making it up as I go along. All right. So broadcast journalism. I love it. It's
been a while since I've been, I've done regular on-air stuff because my husband's a dentist and I left a lot of that behind to help him run the office through our married life. So the first, we've been married over 30 years. So like the last 20 or so is when I, ran the office and I, pursued my other endeavors prior to that. But
Got it.
It's a lot.
And so you developed breast cancer and kind of walk us through that story and kind of what that experience was. And of course, this is for obviously everybody's affected by cancer, right? There's nobody on the face of the earth who is not going to know somebody with cancer by the time they get through this little experiment called life. Everybody's going to know somebody, if not multiple people. I mean, not only as, my mom and my aunts and, other people that I know have transitioned because of cancer. Right. So, so certainly, but what's your story? What kind of, how did it unfold for you?
It's strange. I had been, it was interesting that you said about me being the only one and so forth. And, the growth of the cancer, because I had been getting regular mammograms. I mean, I had another issue, a health issue. And so I was a little late with my mammogram. So it had been maybe about a year and a half, and I went to get a mammogram, and they knew right away that I had breast cancer. I mean, I got a call on the phone. So it was a matter of going to Johns Hopkins and figuring out how to stage it and how bad it, and so forth and so on. So I had like months of tests going back and forth and back and forth. And finally, I'm told that, I'm ready to meet the oncologist. He is the best in the hospital, and so on and so forth. So I go into this small operatory, and, the doctor comes in. My husband and my mother are sitting to my left, and no eye contact whatsoever. And he just goes on and on. Like in my book, I say that like I was like starting to like tune out. Like it was like one of those Peanuts, shows, like wah, 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 wah. No eye contact, just going on and on. I didn't know what he was saying. And then all of a sudden he says, I have consulted with all my colleagues here at Johns Hopkins. And we have all decided, we've all agreed that I'm so sorry, there's nothing that we can do for you. You need to go home and get your affairs in order. Oh,
wow. So he gave you a dissertation on science. It sounds like, and then was like, and the punchline is you're dying. So go ahead and go home and figure it out, because we can't do anything for you. Wow. Exactly. That's a horrible diagnosis.
It was a horrible diagnosis. And then metaphysically, I mean, the craziest thing happened to me. Like the Viki that walked in the room that day died immediately.
Really?
And the Viki that you're talking to today came forward. And I'm telling you, I lunged across the room like a crazy person. Like literally flew, grabbed him by his, his
collar. Yeah.
Pulled him in really, really close. I know. And I'm not an aggressive person. And I did that. But I said to him, you talked to me about all of these colleagues that you've consulted, but what about me? What about what I want? What about what I think? What about my opinion? I'm a mom. Right. I said, I don't care what you cut off me. I don't care what you stick in me. I don't care what you do to me. I am going to be the one. Hence the book.
I love it.
So then I realized, oh my God, my hands are around like this.
I've just assaulted somebody in a hospital. Security's on their way. Right.
So I flew back.
Right.
And I'm like, kind of in shock. Okay, he's going to call
He's
security.
Probably in shock, right? Right. Everyone's in shock.
Right. And I mean, crazy story, but true. And the room was really silent then.
I bet.
Yeah. And it seemed like forever, but it was just like, a short period of time, and it seemed like forever. And then he looked up at me for the first time in the eyes. And he's like, well, okay, how about we try chemo? Now, I'm not promising anything, but if we start with chemo, then we'll go from there. Is that okay with you? He said. I said, okay. But, at that point, I knew that I was in a real pickle. I hadn't really been exposed a lot through loved ones or family members with cancer too much. And so I really had to hit the ground running. And, I'm like, okay, well, what I thought was a curable disease, breast cancer, all of a sudden wasn't. Right. And now I really have to advocate for myself. So I had to hit the ground running. I had to research. I had to figure out what kind of cancer this was and figure out how the heck I'm going to save myself. Right. And that's what I did step by step. I was, from the beginning, by lunging across the room and grabbing this doctor and getting my chemo out of it. I knew that I would then have to go forward with the other treatment, the radiation and so on and
Right.
so forth. And
Right.
what he knew then that I didn't know then, but I learned that the radiation probably would have put me in congestive heart failure.
Oh,
So maybe the cancer would have killed me, but the radiation would have,
right.
maybe not as quick.
Got it.
So it would have been painful and slow.
Right.
But, still within a couple years. So I needed to figure out a way to get that procedure done differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so I, advocated for proton radiation, which is like a pinpoint radiation that's normally done in incidences of brain surgery, when you're working with
really small, right.
Or it's used a lot for men for prostate procedures.
Mm-hmm.
So, they make a lot of money there, but when you have such a large area, it's not as cost effective. So it's really had never been done up to that point. And to this day, as far as I know, still has not been done for such a wide area. But I was able to talk a doctor into doing it for me. But what made it so hard? Oh, I'm so sorry. What made it so hard was that we had to kept changing the places because it was pinpoint, and I had this whole area to do. So it was a long procedure, but that truly is why I'm still here today, because we were able to save my heart and lung. I've only have some minor damage to it. So it was a big deal. But, then I got into the whole thing with the insurance and the non-payment and having to work all of that out and so on and so forth. So it's, it was not easy, but I recommend everybody, you got to be your own advocate, because I'm not saying negative things necessarily about the medical market.
Well, it's okay if you're the guest. You can.
Well,
this podcast brought to you by Johnson & Johnson. No, no, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. We're not sponsored by drug companies. I'm just kidding.
I wanted to be open about, understanding that, in a situation like this, it's, cancer's a business. And
yes,
statistically speaking, wasn't worth the money to save because the prognosis was so dire.
Right. Your odds of living obviously were almost none. So, right.
Almost none. Yeah. Very little percentage.
Right.
And so I knew I had to fight for myself because nobody else was going to do that. And that's what I promote, because, like I said, I'm not saying anything negative about the doctor, because, a lot of ways his hands were tied.
Right.
But in the end, he heard me. And that's really what happened. And he changed his mode of treatment plan. So I can't be angry about that. I just have to move forward. And that's what I did. And, I didn't have time for any of that. When I've got 2 young kids. I had 2 young kids at home at the time.
Right.
And there was no way anyone was raising those kids but me. And that was it.
I like it. That was your motivation. That's your rock, kind of your anchor stone, or whatever we want to call that. That
really
was. That was your why, right? That was your deep why.
It really, you hit that nail on the head. And let me tell you, I thank God today, because it's been the greatest gift. Forget the book and all the other accolades. Raising those 2 kids has been the greatest blessing and gift of my life.
Well, that's amazing.
Any pain or anything that I've gone through or anything I continue to go through, it was so worth it.
Yeah, I have 2 young kids right now, so I totally get and connect with that. Those, everything else is secondary to the welfare and the joy of those 2 little critters that roam around my house and keep me on my toes. Right. And I think through this, through the last 3 years and all the transitions that have happened in the world and then inside of me, they were a lot of times the motivation for me just to get out of bed. right? Was just those kids thinking,
right,
I'm not going to let them down. I'm going to,
right.
I'll let myself down all day. I'll probably let my wife
Me
down,
too.
but
Right. Me too.
I'm not going to let those kids down because,
Right.
I'm their dad and they need me. Right.
Right. Right.
And so, yeah, I think I think it's so important when, and because I've heard, not obviously this is an extreme example, or your story is an extreme example, but I've heard stories over and over again of you have to have your why, even if it's not your kids. There's got to be a reason that you're going. Everybody is going to go through the dark night of the soul. They're going to go through, they're going to go through the shit at some point, and you got to have a strong why. Otherwise, you don't make it. Right. Otherwise, we're not talking to Viki Zarkin today because she didn't make it because she just believed whatever the doctor told her, and she went home and got her affairs in order and she died. Right. I mean, that's your why was what got you through. And so even though this is a story about advocating for yourself, I think there's another story here, which is you got to figure out what your why is, and you got to get anchored to it so that, because I was even, as you were talking, I was like, and it kind of brings chills to me as I'm still thinking of the question, but the question was, it actually brings emotion to me, which is interesting. I don't usually get emotional on the podcast, but it's bringing emotion behind my eyes, which is kind of like, why do you think that God spared you? What was the message that, literally when we're saying 1 out of 7 billion people, and even if we're just, why did God spare you? And you had your why, right?
I had my why, but I mean, I made a deal with God.
And what was it? What was it? Yeah, I like this.
Yeah,
right?
If I could raise my children, I would help women.
Interesting.
And now is my turn because I got to help women. I mean, I got to raise my children. Kids. So now I wrote the book, I speak, I teach a course, I coach, I do everything that I can possibly to help women in healthcare and keep my promise to God.
I love this. I love this story. So, and I'm so glad I was not going to ask you that, or I wasn't going to frame it that way, but it just keeps coming. I mean, I can just literally feel the emotion behind the stuff that was coming through. And I'm like, and I love that you knew your why, you made your commitment, you were certain. And I'm sure there were times you questioned if you were if God was going to deliver, right? But you made your pact and you've stuck to it.
Yes.
And that's, and we've had my own story, so many other stories we've shared on the show, but ultimately your ultimate pain, your ultimate burden, if you want to call it that, has truly become your superpower, right? My
motto is, I'm the luckiest girl around. I just happen to have cancer.
Right.
I mean, that's what I said from the beginning, because, in a way, cancer isn't been such a terrible thing. I mean, granted, I still get regular chemo because I'm living with cancer. I'm not surviving. I'm not really a survivor. Right. So I still every 28 days get maintenance chemo.
Interesting.
And for the last 12 years, and will continue until I live my last breath. So that's hard on your body. And I'm in pain every day, and I have all kinds of issues and so forth. But, getting up and being productive is a blessing. Yes. And keeping my promise to God and still being instrumental in my kids' lives, even though they're in college, is a blessing. And I am the luckiest girl around. I just happen to have cancer. I mean, and that's just the truth of it. Right. Simple as it sounds.
Right. Yes. And I think that helps put a lot of things in perspective for people that don't have cancer, is that attitude or that way of thinking or that way of being, probably is a better way to say it. Your way of being is, we all have stuff we're dealing with. You have a very real thing that you can pinpoint, and you can put a name on it, and you can put it, you can say, I know that this is here. You can test for it. Some people don't have that. Some people it's mental anxiety, depression, all these other stuff that they can but they, it's a little more abstract, but certainly it's kind of how you choose to interact with life, not how, life is going to interact with us the way somebody hits, runs a red light and hits my car. I may not be able to prevent. That may just happen, right? but it's what you do with that thing. And I know that's probably cliche, but I'm learning more and more. It truly is how you approach things. And I think, for me, and it sounds like definitely for you, it's the closer I come to having some type of relationship or understanding with a higher power. We're going to call it God for the sake of this show. But the more relaxed or peaceful, or at least at ease I become with the things that are happening, even if I don't like them, if that makes sense. It doesn't mean I like them, right? But it does mean,
but
right.
It's your new normal, you have to refigure things and figure out a way to be okay and just move forward, because you cannot let it keep you in the muck. You can't get bogged down in, because I am in great pain as we speak,
Interesting.
But complaining about it and talking about it all the time doesn't make it better.
Right. Yep.
I just it's laying around, isn't going to change it either. So, again, it's your new normal. Get up, go out. God gave you this gift.
Right.
So live it, use it. It's like, it's like saying no to God. I mean, I've been given this gift of life. I will never squander it.
Right. And would you have had that same perspective prior to going through this?
No. Remember, I died in that room.
Right. Yeah.
And the new Viki came, and the other Viki never came back. I am who I am now. And I am not as timid, not as quiet. And,
I from talking to you, I did not pick up any of those traits of timidness or quietness. So yes, I would agree with you that the Viki that's here is not somebody that's quiet or timid. And is that and that was your persona? That was part of your personality prior to that day. Was kind of.
I mean, it was. I wasn't as outspoken as I am today, but I wasn't a meek person either. So, I mean, I didn't do like a 360, but I certainly did maybe a 180,
Kind of stripped away maybe some of the BS that was holding you back and just.
Exactly that.
Right. Yeah. That's and became, perfect.
Yes.
I'm reading a series of books right now and literally this morning when I woke up, I was reading this book and it's talking about just literally aligning with your truth and just becoming more and more aligned with your truth. It doesn't mean that you're, that it's just letting go of the past and becoming aligned with your truth and speaking your truth. And if you're truly in your truth, then you're actually if you're in your truth, you're also in alignment with love. If you're in your true truth, right? Not in your egoic mind, but, and that, then you can say about anything to about anyone if you're truly in your truth and it's not offensive and it's not you're not offending anyone if you're just telling your truth, if that makes sense. Right. And so, I think it sounded like when you jumped across there, you just started, you were so pinpoint in telling your truth that it probably just continued, right?
Yes.
Right? With that doctor, it was like
diarrhea of the mouth a little bit. Yes.
Well, I think when the cap comes off, right, there's going to be some fizz. There's going to be a little bit of a mess, but then I'm sure it came into alignment over time, right?
It did.
Yeah.
I'm a little, yes. Yeah. I'm a little more, tactful today.
Right. Exactly.
At the beginning, I was a little.
Right. And so, not that we're going to do a top 10 list, but what would be the top 2 or 3 things anybody listening to the show, anybody watching the show, they have a relative, they have cancer, they have a relative with cancer. I'm going to even take that a little bit broader. They're dealing with illness. They have a relative dealing with some type of illness. I mean, cancer is obviously bad. I mean, that's a big one, but there's a lot of other heart issues and diabetes. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there right now. So what would you tell somebody who's just found out they're diagnosed with really anything that is going to be life altering, or at least needs to be addressed and be a life altering thing, right? It sounded like it was a life altering thing for you.
Oh yeah, of course.
So what would be the top 2 or 3 things that you would just really want to impart to them to get them started down the right path?
Well, I don't know if this is, a good answer up front, but I do recommend, as simple as this sounds, that you take the course that I offer. There's more to cancer than the diagnosis. Right. Mm-hmm. And the reason why this is not a sales pitch, it is more of an incentive, because I teach all of those things in the course. There's no course out there like it today. And I don't understand. There was no place for me to go to say, well, how do I tell my children?
Okay.
How do I find the doctor? How do I fight the doctor? How do I fight the insurance companies? All of this advice that you need to know at the beginning, because quite honestly, if I had listened to all that, or had followed all that, or had gone down some of these roads, I wouldn't be here anymore today. Right. So some of this information I impart can be really helpful to newly diagnosed, for sure, cancer people. It's also helpful to healthcare workers, loved ones, friends, family members, so on and so forth. But that information that I impart is really, really fabulous. And, I do limit the course to 10 to 12 people, so that it gives people an opportunity to interact with each other and develop long-term friendships with the people in the course that, we can keep in touch with and see how everyone's doing, and so on and so forth. So, if I have more people sign up, I just run simultaneous courses, and that way.
Gotcha. Keep everybody in smaller groups.
Yeah. So I would recommend that as sort of like a big, help.
Right.
And then I would probably say, don't forget those little things in life. Don't be so focused that you forget who you are, and forget the people around you, and forget appreciating some of those things that, we've been blessed with to have, and so forth.
So don't let it, try not to let it consume you. Is that what I'm kind of hearing?
Yes, that's a great way to explain it.
Because you kind of you probably get sucked into, I'm sure, a black hole of.
You could, yes.
Right?
But you can't do that. You just cannot.
And how do you not? I guess help us understand that. How do you? What's the balance for that?
Because you have another focus.
Okay.
It's not all about that. It's you have to focus on getting well, not getting sick. You know what I'm saying? You don't go backwards, you go forwards. And you look to your future day by day, minute by minute, hour by hour. And you just move forward.
And so typically then the things that you talk about when you in your book, I'm assuming these are in your book, and I noticed they were on your website as well, but follow your instincts, listen first, diagnose second.
Right.
What's that mean exactly? I understand follow your instincts, but what's the listen first, diagnose second?
Well, those are, I have a organization called Lunge for Healthcare. Get the play on words. Anyway, in the organization, I promote those two issues because it is my belief that if I can change the world with promoting those two issues, I can then go to the insurance companies and say, look, we've saved all this money. Give us back our mammograms at 35. Stop waiting till we're 55. Give us back our pap smears. Give us back our ovarian cancer screening and all the things that we've left out. And then we can go to Congress and promote women in healthcare in Congress. So what I'm saying is, just to go backwards to your original question, I promote in those two things, women, tap into your own instincts, understand how you feel so that you can then share that information and be aggressive about your own health care. And then 2, listen first. I'm asking the doctors, listen first for 5 minutes when you come into that medical operatory,
okay.
and then diagnose second. Because if we have people listening and then we have the women tapping into their instincts so they're able to communicate, this is what I'm feeling, we can save so many dollars long term from cutting and pill popping and so forth with this preventative medicine. I mean, it is just so simple. Those 2 things can save so many dollars, so many women's lives. It's crazy. But the statistics back it up.
And when you say the statistics back it up,
the statistics of it being able to be helpful for preventative medicine. And things. And
so let's expand on that a little bit. So when you say, so you're encouraging healthcare providers to listen first and diagnose second.
Correct.
And that listen first, because in that listening first period, obviously they're probably getting feedback or information about stuff that instead of coming in saying, this is your symptom and this is your pill.
Right.
They're really starting to hear what actually is happening.
Yes, exactly. Right. Let's have women understanding how they're feeling early on, so we can bring all these things to our doctors, and then we get the reception that we're looking for from our doctors, so we don't walk away and say, "Oh, he's not helpful to me," Right. So we work together. Yep. It's a combination, but it's very simple.
And we've had some really good physicians, naturopathic doctors on the show. And I would definitely say for anyone listening, this field is fairly new to me in the last couple of years, but functional medicine doctors, especially a general primary functional medicine doctor, has really opened my eyes to they're not treating symptoms, they're treating the actual dis-ease in the system, right? So it's not a I have a cough, I need cough medicine. It's more of, well, what's causing the cough? And that's simplistic. That's a simplistic example, but tracing down to
how have you been feeling prior to the cough?
Right. Is there
been going on in your life?
Exactly.
Those sorts of things. Maybe it's just an allergy, for crying out loud. Maybe you don't need all that other stuff. So let's talk to people. Let's listen to each other.
Right.
And so, move forward.
I would definitely recommend, if somebody doesn't know that much about functional medicine or functional medicine doctors, like I said, we've had some phenomenal practitioners on this show we did our happiness summit. We had a lot of people on there, and then through the podcast and through some live stuff we've been doing. But it's just amazing to talk to people who are looking at you as a whole person, like you're talking about. You like looking at the whole person and not just this symptom. And how do I push how do I check the box that says I cured that, not cured, but address that symptom? But then we're never ever getting to what's actually causing. I had a fascinating podcast earlier in the week where this gentleman's company looked at DNA, and they could see from DNA how, like, some of us are missing certain I'm going to butcher this, but basically certain things aren't firing, or we're just missing that.
Right.
DNA isn't the same in everybody. So they may be missing. And like that gentleman was going through, he was in his 30s, had 5 different medical conditions. And it was because once he tested his DNA, he found out that his body actually didn't have the ability to process certain types of protein, or when I say protein, not like meat, but proteins in the body, proteins. Right. And so he was like, well, no wonder. And so once he addressed those things, then he was able then to lean in and say, okay, well, what do I need to do functionally? What I need to do, like diet wise, what I need to do exercise, sleep wise. And he was able to reverse all 5 of those using DNA and supplements and sleep. I mean, the stuff that we all know, but it wasn't one size fits all. It wasn't like everybody needs 8 hours of sleep and they need to sleep this way. I mean, it was like, there's some good general practices, but overall there's some things that are specific to you as a human being. And I think, as you're saying, listen first and diagnose second, everybody's going to be a little bit different, right? Yes. Everybody's going to have a little bit. And so there's some nuances, the other thing I've really started to understand through the show is that, there's a lot of this that rests in emotion and in past trauma. Like we had Mark Woolen come on the show, and he was talking about generational trauma. And he was talking about working with people that actually were experiencing physical symptoms of stuff that was not actually, I mean, that was attached actually to their DNA, which is weird. These two very different guests were on, but there's, I think a holistic functional medicine doctor or somebody like yourself that can walk people through the process. There's more to disease than just the label and the so-called cure, right? I think it's deeper than that. And just like you experienced, I mean, I think you literally had, I don't know what you call that moment where you basically accosted that poor man, but what was that? What did you call that? I mean, do you have a name for what, the before and after was, do you have a name for that actual moment? Did you had an awakening experience? Oh, your lunch moment, but right. But you definitely had some type of, if you want to call it spiritual or psychological shift, right?
Yes, I did. Metaphysical is.
And metaphysical. The other is a great way to say it. So you had some type of metaphysical shift that I would almost say guaranteed that you at least had a shot to survive and recover. Versus had you not had that shift, I would also say that the things that caused you to have that cancer in you, and if I'm putting words in your mouth, you can stop me at any point. But I'm trying to put words in your mouth here. I'm trying to lead you down a path. If you can't tell, I've got an agenda. But ultimately, whatever you weren't processing and weren't doing in your truth or with your voice changed in that moment and allowed you to speak to your truth and allowed you to use your voice, which then also that tool or that ability then was the catalyst for you using it to heal yourself, or not heal yourself, but to live, to survive and to live. Is that
to fight and live and educate myself? Yes.
Right. And so, yeah. And so, I would just, thank you. Thank you. So I would just, and I guess what I'm saying is I encourage you out there, that everybody out there, that we're all doing work on ourselves, personal development work, if you want to call it that, spiritual work, whatever. You're either working proactively or it's working on you. Right. And when, and when it, right, kicking your butt. And that's what it feels like. So, I have daily practices now that I've adopted just because I did get my butt kicked so much. And then when I found some practices that work, meditative, contemplative, spiritual, studying the Bible, stuff like that, that I found, and I'm not doing it because I'm super religious or super even devout I found out that it just hurt less if I did certain things. Right. Right. It was like, well, no, it's the truth. It was the truth. It was like, it's like if I every morning start the morning with some type of devotional practice, and I typically end the day reading some type of book that feeds my soul something or helps me understand something a little differently, I find that my days go much better than when I don't do those things. So it's not like it's for me, it's very practical. It's like if I'm doing a certain thing and I feel good, probably want to do more of it. And if I'm not doing certain things and I feel bad, I probably should do more of the things that make me feel good. And when I say good, I'm not talking about pleasure. I'm talking about, a grounded, peaceful, centered good.
Right.
Not just having fun, right?
Be the best husband or the best father, the best broadcaster.
At least in my own mind, I'm the best of those things.
You are.
Thank you. Oh, Viki, thank you. Oh, thank you. I think every day, I'll just give you my cell phone. Just every day, just text me that message, Viki. You're the best father that I've ever met. You're the best husband. I'll show it to my wife. I'll say, see, honey, she says I'm the best husband that she's ever met. Other than her own. Even
if it's in your own head.
Exactly. Well, that's the point, right? Our belief systems drive, to your point, you were speaking earlier, our vision and our belief systems, they drive our experience. No matter what's happening externally, they drive the internal experience, right?
Right.
Because I guarantee, I just from talking to you, the way that you engage in life through this adversity is much different than a lot of people engage in life who are still hiding behind their truth, if that makes sense.
I suppose, yes.
Right. It's still, even though to your point, you're in pain, you're still joyful, you're still present, you're still, loving is a way, in love or in the stream of love. So, and you can feel those things through. So it's not that you have escaped from life, right? From the,
no.
it's quite the opposite, right? You've just leaned in and said, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. So let's deal with it, but let's still get on with the job of living.
My eyes are open.
Yeah. And I think that's so important that we as a community, we as society talk about that. It's not the social media, and I know this is cliche too, but it's not the social media. This is my Facebook life or my Instagram life, or here's all the pictures of me living this great life. Yeah, certainly that could be true, but it's also living with the other things in life too. It's not that anyone's living this life that it's just all sunshine and rainbows, unless they choose it's sunshine and rainbows and still have all the other stuff happening in life, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So yeah, so I really appreciate your authenticity and your transparency today through your story. I think it's very encouraging for me. I'm getting pumped up just talking to you.
Thank you.
Yes. And so typically where do you go from here? You've got the course, you've got the book out. How long's the book been out? I Am the One.
The book has been out a little over a year. This is
nice. Love the cover.
Thank you.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah. I Am the One. And you can just, I'm sure, get that anywhere you buy books.
Well, yes, you truly
Amazon.
can. You can get it's on sale now on Amazon.
There we go. Right.
And you can buy it on my website, iamtheone.com.
iamtheone.com. Nice website.
Yay, thank you.
That's a great website.
And my email is iamtheone.viki, which is VIKI @gmail.com.
Love it. All those
can get in touch with me that way.
I love it. So you've got the course you're doing, and it sounds like there's a live component to that, or a group.
I do some. Yeah. I do. The course is all on Zoom. So the whole course is live and interactive.
Oh wow. Okay, so this isn't even though it's virtual, it's live. Yeah. So this is a live course on Zoom. Okay.
Yes. I'll eventually record it, and then it'll be more cost effective for people. But for now, I'm doing some beta classes and things like that, offering some discounts that way and so forth. Just doing the best I can because I just only want to help people.
Yep.
I just want to help, and I'm just one woman, I know, but I will work tirelessly.
I love it. So it sounds like you would also be a resource for other organizations, other people that.
Oh, absolutely. And I speak all the time. So anybody wants to hire me as a speaker, I'd be so thrilled because I can then reach a live audience or a Zoom audience or regardless of the audience. That interaction is so helpful. And, then people can take that information and spread the word. And that's all I want to do.
Well, I love it. And so for me, it just reinforces, we all have to do our part and sharing with others. I always say sharing is caring. In fact, even my kids now will say that, right? So sharing is caring. I'll say sharing is, and they'll say caring. And then they roll their eyes, but they're still cute. But I think it's important that we all, again, live our truth, speak our truth, and lean in and support each other. It's like I always, the visual I'm getting is kind of we all are locking arms, walking hand in hand. It's not that one of us is in the front and one of us is in the back. We're all going to have down days. We're all going to have off periods of our life. And then we what?
Lift each other up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Recognize your surroundings. Look up. Stop looking down all the time. That's what I tell people. Look up. See in front of you instead of looking down all the time. You waste you can really trip and hurt yourself. Look up.
Look up. I love it. That's our ultimate advice for the day. Look up. Yes, and there's actually some science behind that. There's actually some literal science that looking up thing fires different neurons. It fires your system differently, your sparks and all the fun stuff. I'm a little brain dead, I guess. But it actually physiologically changes your attitude when you're actually even just raise your chin like 2 degrees. It changes your perspective of life because you're more optimistic. This is more optimistic than this, right? It's just something about kind of opening up the heart, opening up the chest, kind of this whole sense of optimism when you look up. So if nothing else, just look up, right? Even if you'll trip, you'll get a good laugh out of the fact that you're looking up and not looking where you're walking, right? That'll even change your attitude.
Exactly. Yeah,
I love it.
All that interesting.
Right. So I am the one.com is the website and everything. People can interact with you there. And certainly if they would like to join your group or your book, it's all right there.
Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, I am the one.Viki or I am the one/Viki. You can usually find me that way. Viki Zarkin. You can just, look for me.
Yep, that's how I found you as well. So, so thank you for coming on the show today. We certainly appreciate your joy and your attitude towards life, and it's very inspiring. So, thank you, Viki.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being a part of the BriteVibe podcast. For more information, go to britevibe.com. That's BRITE Vibe, VIBE.com. Thank you for listening.